2. Okay. So we are live. Finally, we are live. YouTube, what's up, man? Matt Garland here, NMLS number 58700, but better known as MG, the mortgage guy. So look, guys, I got something special for you today. Special. I got 3 queens coming from Philadelphia, and we're going to talk about that Philadelphia real estate market. First, shout out to everybody on the Zoom call. From Earn Your Leisure University. Shout out to all my earners. And if you guys want to become a member of EYL University, make sure you use my promo code EYLMG. EYLMG will give you 60% off the annual price. Go to EYLUniversity.com to sign up. Shout out to everybody that's coming on the live stream right now on YouTube. People saying they was waiting for this. My apologies for the delay, but it is 4 o'clock on a Monday. And everybody in the world is streaming at the same time. So my apologies. We are here now, and we're about to tear the roof off of YouTube with this one. So first and foremost, let me introduce my panelists for the Philly real estate market update for May 4th, 2020. Let's start off with Michelle Phillips. Michelle, you're first.
All right, I'm Michelle Phillips. I am a realtor with Compass Real Estate, and I'm licensed in both PA and Delaware.
All right, Marquita, go ahead. And what do you specialize in? Investors, first-time home buyers?
Well, actually, I have more sellers than buyers, but buyers, sellers, investors, all of it, and all price points, Philadelphia and all the surrounding counties, and then Newcastle County and Delaware.
And you are also an investor as well?
Yes.
There we go. Marquita, it's on you.
Hey, I'm Marquita Eshin. I'm a realtor here in Philadelphia, licensed in PA. I'm also in finance, in the pharma industry, and an investor also, and a small business owner. So, and I specialize in luxury real estate.
I'm loving that view. What are we looking at in the background?
That's a view.
That is a view.
That's a view.
That is a hell of a view. You look like you're moving on up like the Jeffersons over
I'm trying very hard.
I love it. I love it. Aisha Selden, the queen gorilla.
What's up? So yeah, I'm actually not a licensed realtor. I am an investor here in Philly. I primarily buy and hold rentals. I buy everything from the single family space, primarily in Philadelphia. I got a couple in the surrounding suburbs. I have some 44, 45 units. I've got one property that I'm working on right now out in the city of Angels in Los Angeles. That's just a fun space for me, is kind of what it'll be, like a second residence. I'll be bi-coastal when it's done its rehab. Oddly enough, I actually took the class to become a licensed agent. So this time 2 years ago, I spent like the weeks that it took to become a licensed realtor. And then when it got right down to it, I looked at the risks of getting my license as an investor and decided against it. So yeah, but I'm doing a deal. I almost never sell anything, and I'm excited to hear what these agents have to say about what's happening in the real estate market.
Okay, so let's start off with Michelle. Michelle, let's talk about the first-time home buyer. Since COVID-19 nationwide, there's been a lot of down payment assistance and government grants that kind of dried up or were suspended. Is the same be said for Philadelphia? I'm mute yourself.
Sorry, I had to mute. So yeah, initially, yes, they suspended. The most common grant in Philly is the $10,000. There's a $10,000 grant for first-time home buyers in Philly. So initially they suspended it, but then they kind of came back and were allowing people to still move forward with it. So pretty much at the beginning, if you weren't already under contract on a property, then that was it. You couldn't do it. But there's a way around it now. So that is back in effect for everyone. There's also some grants. I'm licensed in Delaware too. So I know this is about Philly, but you'll hear me speak about both. But Delaware, same thing. They had grants that kind of dried up, but they're kind of, moving back. So, putting those back in place as well.
So what kind of grants are available? It's like, what's the minimum credit score? Did they have any restrictions with that? Did they require more reserves or lower debt to income ratios? Were there any changes when they came back online?
There haven't been any changes yet, but I anticipate that there will be. So there's a couple, excuse me, there's a couple different grants. There were some as low as 620, there were some at 660. I don't think that's going to stay the same, but we haven't seen a change in the requirements as of yet. But I do think that that's probably going to change because we've already seen a change in for mortgages. So I'm pretty sure that the grants will kind of be right in line with that.
Okay, now what about so your first time home buyers, what's kind of like the popular products are they doing right now in the last 30 to 45 days? Is it still a lot of FHA? Is it more conventional? Are they putting more money down? Like what's happening right now with the buyer landscape?
So you had a couple lenders that stopped doing FHA, and then you also had some that changed the requirements. So there were some buyers that were pre-approved that are no longer approved. There were also some people that were approved. Let's say you had a buyer who was approved for 250,000. Maybe now that has changed as well. So there are some lenders not doing FHA, but there's still a lot that are. And then there's a lot of people that were qualifying for 3% down as well. So your first time home buyer, you might qualify for 3% down if the credit scores are there. So I'm seeing more buyers lean towards conventional for two reasons. One, you're less likely to get under a contract and then, under contract on a house and then be told later in the process that you can't get the house anymore. But then also it's more favorable to sellers as well.
Why is it more favorable to sellers?
They don't have to go through. So in Philly right now, we're still on lockdown. So there's supposed to be no showings right now on any properties for right. So, but there's also for appraisals, an appraiser is not supposed to go into a property right now. So what they were doing is a lot of drive-bys. On a drive-by, there is already with an FHA, this is not a fact, but this is just kind of something that we've seen. It's already a little bit harder sometimes to appraise and get your value on an FHA or VA. When they're doing a drive-by, it could go either way because they're not going inside at all. So they're relying on you for pictures. So you better hope you have good pictures and you can really explain everything you've done in this property to justify the price. With conventional, it's a little bit easier. They're not as, tough on you with the appraisal, but doing a drive-by and then FHA, those two combined together, you can forget it.
Yeah.
So I actually have colleagues. What's that?
It's definitely been challenging.
Oh yeah, I've had colleagues that told me they came in 30 grand under. So the deal is done when that happens.
Yeah, finish. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, nothing at all.
That's definitely been a huge challenge with these appraisals. Now, what about home inspections? Are home inspections still getting done?
Yes. So a lot of home inspectors are just basically telling everyone right now that they can't be there. Buyers can't come. Realtors definitely can't come. There are a couple that are allowing, one or two buyers to come, but, practice social distancing, but that's about it. But yeah, for the most part, they want as least amount of people on a property as they can.
So with your buyers right now, or for what you're seeing from your colleagues or your team, because I know you run a team also, right? How many agents do you have on your team?
2. It's myself and 2 other agents.
So a total of 3 of you guys, and you guys are doing a lot of transactions in your market. Like, are you seeing offers going below asking price right now, or are the homes still getting accepted offers at asking price?
A little bit under, but nothing that I don't think it's any different than what was going on before. Like I have a property that went under, like I submitted an offer today and it was accepted. And it's an offer that honestly, we would have probably submitted the same offer if this was 2 months ago. So, for the most part, the houses are still selling. We haven't seen a decline in sales price yet. I don't think this is going to stay this way forever, but for right now, houses are still being sold close to asking price.
So what do you say to those buyers who want to offer 30% lower than asking right now?
So let me answer this 2 ways. I'm gonna answer it as a realtor and I'm gonna answer it as an investor. As an investor, hey, listen, that's gonna be me all day long. I'm offering you 30 grand under. But as a realtor, if I have sellers, yeah, I'm not taking 30% under. And if I'm representing a buyer, I'm not going to advise a buyer right now there's a few things that are going to come into play. So obviously, if a house is overpriced, or if it's been sitting on the market long, or if it, the condition of it but if it's priced right and it just came on the market, by no means are you getting ready to get this house for 30% or 30 grand under. It's not happening.
Yeah, let's clear that up too, because I can just see the comments right now, like, oh, she's contradicting herself, right?
No. Well, as an investor, you always listen. An investor's not putting in a full price offer. Let's be clear.
But investors not buying retail. That's first things first. Investors not buying retail. They're buying
There's a difference.
Below value properties, piece of crap properties.
Right.
More towards is the buyer who wants to buy that turnkey property.
Exactly. I sell a lot of rehab. So if I put a rehab on the market today and it's priced correctly, by no means are we getting ready to take an offer that's 30% under asking price. By no means. But as an investor, if I, and I wouldn't look for a property kind of like what Aisha does in terms of like, something that's going to need to be built from the ground up. But yeah, you find an investment property, not too many people are going to offer you full asking price, and they know that.
Yeah, nah, hell no. So the everyday first-time home buyer market in Philadelphia, we've been in quarantine how long? Almost 2 months now. I forget the days.
It's close to 2 months.
About 2 months.
So 2 months. So the home prices have shifted a little bit, but not a huge decline.
Right. Absolutely. It's not a huge decline at all. Every price range is a little bit different, but if you take a house that's, let's say, 300, 350 and less, the norm before this was that, yeah, you might find a house, if it's not multiple offers, that, yeah, you might try to get 5, 10, 15,000 off maybe. And that was before this. So I would say that's still kind of going on now, but it's definitely not, it's not a market crash like what people are thinking. This is not, it's not 2008. So people are thinking like, oh, because the country is a pandemic and blah, 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 that, I can get a house for $2 now. And that's not the case. And I'm not saying it won't be 6 months from now. We don't know. But right now it's not.
It's not. So Marquita, you work with the luxury market, right? So I know in New York, the luxury market was already starting to get soft, probably about a year ago, 16 months ago, somewhere around there. And now COVID-19 is definitely, the luxury buyers are not really out there right now. And the ones who are getting good deals, by the way. But how is the luxury market in Philly?
So pretty much the same. COVID kind of came at a point where, March, April, this is like the hot time for real estate. It's the hot time when the market is booming. So a lot of people are buying and selling, and a lot of realtors make most of their money in this quarter. So in the luxury market, pretty much the same. And a lot of my clients are heavily invested in the stock market. So that also kind of, piggyback on where they are at this point now, as far as buying. Like I had a buyer I was actually working with. We had a budget. He was at 3.9 million, just under 4 million. We're finding properties, we're virtually viewing them. And then as the stock market continued to decline, he didn't pull completely out. He still is on the hunt, but now he even specifically said, due to the stock market, his net worth isn't where it was. And so he's reevaluating, what he's willing to spend. So now he's at 2.5. So he's still in there, he's still looking, but, oftentimes buyers in the market of luxury real estate, they're usually heavily invested in the stock market as well. And so with the volatility with that, they just aren't comfortable buying at the capacity that they would have pre-COVID. And then I also have another investor who opposite, he kind of missed that, that spike in the stock market, and he sold a lot before COVID. And he just put an offer in for a property 50 grand over what they asked because he wants to start investing in real estate. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me right now. I have somebody I was working with from Singapore who, kind of like a group, they wanted to come in and invest in commercial real estate in Philly, a strip mall kind of thing. And they are a little hesitant now, but it's more because they can't really have access to physically come and see the property. So they're still interested in the market, and especially in Philadelphia and commercial, but their hesitation comes in they can't physically do what they would have when we were initially talking. They were going to come see, they were going to come kind of view and physically inspect a lot of the property. So it's a mixed bag for me right now, but things are still moving. And I think a lot of the movement is kind of pre-COVID. So any kind of sales and stuff, especially in luxury that you're seeing now, they started before COVID. So it's kind of like the transactions are now on their way to ending, to closing. They started pre-COVID. But I think as far as them really jumping in now, they're hesitant because they are still trying to fill out where things are going to bottom out.
So where have you seen like average days on market? Like if a home gets listed right now in the luxury market, today, May 4th, how long is it really taken over the last couple of months to get something into contract?
Well, that would depend. So there's that depends. So I know with my particular group, we took a property from another brokerage, which they had a horrible time trying to get it sold. And, we managed to get it sold in, I think it was 70 days. But it was in the marketing. It was the fact that we were able to have a huge mixer at the property and have tons of people there and have a party. Now, and that stuff is kind of not able to happen now. So I don't know what the climate will hold as far as the future, but I think ultimately it would depend on the location. It would depend on the agent, and it would depend on kind of what's going on in the market. Now, I'm a little skeptical on actual sales at that capacity being as fast because of the uncertainty. Just at that scale, just at the capacity, because it's such a large dollar amount.
So luxury market is on the clock, in your opinion, basically. So luxury market will probably decline more than the traditional regular market.
But yeah, I think so. Short term, I think we're going to do more of like I feel like it'll be more of like a U-curve recovery. So we're going to slowly decline into the fall if COVID doesn't come back in the fall, like I heard they were speculating, and it'll bounce back towards the end of the year and even maybe in the beginning of 2020. So short term, I do see it just because piggybacking off the volatility in the stock market and a lot of the luxury market, the buyers being heavily invested in the stock market.
So anyone looking to buy in that space right now could potentially get themselves a home run deal.
Absolutely.
Shit, if you guys on YouTube, it's about 150 of y'all right now. Make sure, number one, y'all hit that like button. Number two, shout out to Andre Hatchett with the super chat. I appreciate the love. But if anybody's looking to buy luxury right now in Philly, that's where they need to go right now. So like where does the price point in Philly start for the luxury market?
You could start at 1.4. You can go all the way up to 20 million. We're in the process of, listing upwards of 17 million. So 1.4. The jumbo loans start at 730 grand. So technically that's a luxury property there. So it ranges. In Philly,
I didn't even know Philly got down like that, in all honesty, until recently. Starting to see $900,000 loan requests coming in from Philly. I'm like, wait a minute, Philly, how's this even possible?
Oh yeah, we get down like that.
We so used to the 20K bandos.
No, we didn't. No, we get down like that, and it's gonna be even more. We'll probably talk about that later. But even with a lot of investors probably switching their strategies, because some of my developments that were in process, I'm kind of switching to. I intended on it being a purchase, but now I'm kind of switching to more of a rental. But it's still, I built it with intentions on selling it as condos, so it's a little more higher end. But just until COVID kind of pans out, I'm gonna just switch that strategy over and do like more of a hold. But that's hitting the luxury market soon, and it's gonna be like not the bandos. So.
Wow.
But those bandos are only 10 minutes away from some of the $1 million homes.
Mm-hmm.
So Philly, you can drive 10 minutes away and you hit $1, $2, $5 million homes easy.
So what's the hot areas right now? So if I'm a first-time home buyer, right, I'm looking to buy a multifamily, right? Where am I going in Philly to buy a multifamily right now? What's the hot areas?
What's your price point? That's what's going to determine that is what's the price point.
Let's say if
I mean,
I
I'm a multifamily. You said $400,000?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what you're looking. I don't buy stuff that expensive. Ain't nobody got that kind of money.
And listen, I don't have a first-time home buyer buying a $400,000 multifamily.
Well, see, I'm in New York, so for me, that's like I just try to throw up a number. All right, so what's
the New York prices?
What's the price?
So here's a good example. I had a consult call this weekend with a guy who was looking at a 4-unit in West Philly, which is arguably, I mean, West Philly's a great market. You'll never have a shortage of tenants in West Philly. And for this 4-unit that he said needed about a $50,000 kind of refresher upgrade, was listed for I think like $215 or something like that. So, I mean, you can buy a 4-unit, and we looked through all his numbers, his FHA financing. Basically, he was going to do a rehab out of pocket. He was going to list one of the units. He was basically going to say he was going to live in one of the units. And I mean, it was still, once we ran all the numbers, roughly an 18% cap rate. So, I mean, you can get great real estate in Philly at still relatively decent prices. And I think that's why a lot of New York investors have been attracted to our markets. I think that's why, I mean, investors from all over the country have started to invest in Philly because we've got great rents. I mean, you look at some of the other markets around the country, you look at some of the markets down south, you look at some of the markets like Detroit or Cleveland, where tenants are renting properties for $500-600 a month. I mean, I've got nothing that cheap. I mean, even though I may have paid $20,000 or $30,000 for a bando, I don't want $500-600 rents. Like I would forget about the goddamn house if somebody was only paying me $500 a month. So I think that we're one of those ideal markets where we can still buy something very cheap, and I can still get a G a door. So so Matt, to your point, I mean, there's West Philly. I'm buying a lot in the Temple medical area, so right near Temple Hospital, Temple Med School, which was just I mean, that's not very long ago, put there. So there are some additional investments that are being put there. There are a lot of investors that are investing heavily in that area. You've got Strawberry Mansion, which is a great area. The only issue with Strawberry Mansion is if you don't buy it already legally zoned as a multifamily, it's virtually impossible to get the zoning for it.
Why is that? Because I had a property I was going to buy with Malik like last year sometime. And it was one family. I don't know. I think it was in the Temple area, but it was a big one family, 3 levels. So the thought behind it was to convert it to a 3-family.
Sure.
But from what he was telling me, you had to go to like all these meetings and go through the town and all he was just saying a whole slew of things that I had no interest in. And I'm like,
the zoning process is the same regardless. So if you buy like in that area that you mentioned, I've got a property that's literally, so Broad Street is like the main street that runs through almost all of Philadelphia. I've got a 3-story property right behind Temple Med School, right off of Broad Street. That's 3 stories. It's currently legally zoned as a single family. I've got to go through zoning to get it zoned as a 3-unit building. So I've got to go through all the stuff that you don't want to go through. Zoning meetings, I've got to send out letters to neighbors, asking them to show up. And then I've got to basically petition to the neighbors on why it makes sense for me to have this property as a 3-family. The good news is I will more than likely get approved, but if you go to like Strawberry Mansion, you can pretty much forget it. I mean, if it's not already legally zoned, because of parking, because of, a variety of different things that the neighbors kind of think are going to happen as a result of too many properties becoming multifamily properties in their neighborhood, it's more than likely not going to happen. So I like the Temple medical area. Sure, you're going to have to go through zoning. Some investors have properties that are not legally zoned, but it's listed as a single family, but they still have 2 or 3 or 4 properties or apartments in those. Not that I would do anything like that, of course.
Yeah, of course not.
Of course not.
Of course not.
No, not me.
So where do you ladies see the market going? Right, we in this pandemic, things are messed up all over the country. People are dying, right? People being laid off or getting furloughed. the world is coming to an end according to a lot of people, right? But I don't think so. I think once America reopens, this is going to be like a buying frenzy, personally.
So,
talk to me
Matt, if I can speak a little bit on that, Michelle, I'll let you take over. So, these are my favorite times. You know, when things look absolutely disastrous, that's, I think, the ideal buying time. So, for example, if I look back to in 2008, I only owned 4 doors. And then I just kind of waited for like the bottom to fall out of the market in Philly, which very well may happen in our real estate market here. And I went from, in 2011, I started just loading up, and I went from 4 doors to over 40 doors over that, from 2011 basically until 2018, because markets like this is where there's a massive transfer of wealth. So I would be looking at a market like this, and looking at how high unemployment has gone and thinking there are opportunities in this market. So given everything that's happening, I think that, you know, while we certainly don't want to like prey on someone else's downfall, and I get the sensitivity and issues obviously around everything that's happening, but as an investor, I'm always looking for blood in the streets. I'm always looking for opportunities. So I think that a market like this, as crazy as things can get, I'm, as an investor, like we talked about earlier, I'm the investor that's offering 30% below asking. And if I do it enough, someone is willing to say yes. So I would be looking at this as, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for, because in 2011, I said, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for, and literally built a multi-million-dollar portfolio by being ready to take advantage of a significant downturn in the market. So that's how I would be looking at this.
Are you going to continue buying, or are you going to wait till you finish rehabbing your entire portfolio before you buy again?
So I mean, I've got 12 units left in my inventory to rehab, but if prices get low enough, I'll go back to the exact same mindset that I had between 2011 and 2018. And if shit is cheap, I gotta buy it. So even if I've got to delay rehabbing my existing units because stuff is just that cheap, I'll buy it even if I don't have the money to rehab it yet. I'll buy it just and park it in my inventory and get to it when I get to it. So, you know, I think that a huge miss is when things are cheap, when things are dirt cheap, you have to take advantage of it. You got to strike when the iron's hot, because there are only very few times in history where markets drop significantly. So if this market drops significantly, you got to be prepared to take advantage of it.
Agreed. Go ahead, Michelle. You wanted to add to that?
You're on mute, Michelle.
Yeah. So when we first went on lockdown, my thought was, okay, they stopped showings. I'm like, okay, nobody's going to want to buy. People are going to be scared. Nobody's going to want to sell, who already, you know, didn't have plans on selling, unless of course they're, you know, getting ready to lose their house. And then I was surprised. Sorry, I told you you're going to hear the boss lady, but I was very surprised about 1 to 2 weeks into this lockdown, the amount of phone calls I got about, I'm still trying to buy, I still want to get pre-approved, I still want to move forward, still keep sending me houses. And then my sellers who were planning on going on the market were like, we still want to go on the market, we want to sell, and we want to buy something new. And if I didn't know that we were going through something right now, I would think this is a typical spring market. So my thought process is, as soon as this lockdown is over, I already have about 7 pre-approved buyers ready to go. And I also have about maybe 6 properties that I need to put on the market ASAP. So this is with the lockdown. So it makes me wonder what's going to happen once we're off lockdown. You know, is it going to be even more? Is it going to be even better? So where I thought people were going to be too afraid, my thought is that no, this is going to be an amazing summer for real estate.
So should people buy right now, or should they wait?
So here's the odd thing, is that people are buying right now. So we can't do any showings. And if I told you how many houses are being, are going under contract right now, sight unseen, just off of pictures, just off of virtual tours, people are buying right now. So I think people don't want to get caught up in what's going to happen after the lockdown. Is their thought is going to be a buying frenzy. And I don't think people want to get caught up in it. And their thought is, if I make an offer right now, prior to this, Philly's market was insane. We could put a house on the market and have multiple offers within a few hours, maybe a day or two, but multiple offers on so many houses that I think people who were already out looking felt like, let me put in an offer now because I don't have to worry about competing with 5 other people. And they probably have already lost out on a few properties. So I think that's why people are just saying, look, I'll put in an offer now and I'll just make it contingent on me seeing the property at some point before closing, but at least I've nailed down the property.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this, Marquita? You think people should buy right now? Should they wait?
Well, I think that, so my personal strategy as an investor, I'm getting my capital ready. I'm gonna really, really go heavy into the market and buy. Because like Aisha said, and Michelle said, I know that it's gonna, eventually bottom out when quarantine opens. I wanna be ready to push the gun on, basically take advantage of as much as I can. Even if I can't do anything with it, I wanna sit on it because eventually I will be able to, and then things are gonna start to flatten out, go up, and I'll be, already at a really huge advantage. So I don't think people should, be crazed or scared or think the world is going to end. I think you should be, if you aren't invested yet, then you should be, making sure that you get your credit to a point where you be able to, you're figuring out what you need to do to be able to get a pre-approval, start looking around and see what market you want to get into, look at locations. This is the time, perfect time to do all of that stuff. So when quarantine is over, then you'll be able to hit the ground running. That's exactly what I plan to do. Like I'm going to, invest heavy. And even with not being able to do certain, new construction projects because, as far as like demo and underpinning and stuff like that, they stopped that if you hadn't had your permits before like the 20th of March. So if I buy something like a lot, I won't be able to necessarily start working on it, until some of that frees up. But at least I'll have it to me at what I think will be a good price point, as opposed to like what it would have been pre-COVID. So I definitely think you should definitely plan on getting into the market and buying smartly, especially investors. You make your money on the purchase. So This is the time.
So I got EYLU member Arthur. Arthur, can you hear us?
Peace, peace. Can you hear me?
Peace, King. Talk to the queens.
Peace, ladies. I actually tuned in super late. I didn't get in here till about 4:30 because I was on another conference call. But thank you, ladies, for tuning in and dropping this little information. Quick question that I had, Aisha, I've been following you on Instagram now for probably the last year. The other two ladies I'm just now becoming familiar with, but one of the things that I've been trying to do, and EYL has been a big part in helping me facilitate this, is I'm looking to invest in other markets. But I know that just quite frankly, I don't have the time to be in Philly. You know what I mean? I don't have the time to be in Houston, and these are two of the markets I'm looking at. And so the question I have for you, and I hear that you're ready in your capital and you're getting ready to jump out there and look for those deals, is do you have any opportunities for outside investors to provide capital for you? Is that something that you're open to? Yeah.
What was that for?
I mean, so it's probably for all of us. Yeah.
All three of them.
Yeah, I'll start, and maybe the other ladies feel differently. I've never taken investor funds. I'm one of those very nervous people that, I don't want to be caught up in any like scam or Ponzi or anything like that. And I talk quite a bit about like the risk of raising capital. So but if this market gets crazy enough, it's certainly something that I'd be willing to explore. I mean, if stuff gets dirt cheap, and these kind of markets, a black swan event, a major downturn in the market, that excites the hell out of me. So if things get rough enough and I can't, I'm out there trying to buy more than I can financially handle, it's something that I would be open to, which is something I don't normally do.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd be like, I think that again, there are very few times in history where there's a massive transfer of wealth. I recognized that in 2008, where I was like, all right, this could get good. I waited a bit, and I saw stuff just keep plummeting further. I mean, and Michelle and I talked about where I started buying in South Philly, a block that Michelle is very familiar with. You know, I was buying houses at like, that had been sitting on the market for like 8-9 months, and I was paying 50 grand for them. And today, literally the house that we have a party wall that separates us. I paid $56,000 for this house. The house that I share a party wall with just sold for $450.
Damn.
So, you know, and I got 2 houses on that block and 1 around the corner. So there are very, very few times in history where like shit goes down like that. And you gotta be prepared, as I mentioned earlier, to strike when the iron's hot. So if things get chaotic, and stuff starts to look like, you know, where we can really take advantage of it, and it's again more than I could possibly handle from a capital standpoint, because I don't like banks. I would look for investors before I looked heavily at banks. So something that I'd consider.
Okay.
But you know, the other ladies, they may feel the same or differently.
I feel the same. Like, I've worked with a partner, and at the same, I don't like banks. I like to be, you know, very under leveraged for situations like this. So I would entertain it. You know, I'm conservative, and I have my own way of doing things. So I would need to, you know, to me, I would always almost prefer it to be more on a partnership kind of basis. Just for reasons of personal, like, liability reasons. I just would kind of rather more taking up on a partnership, but it would be something that I would entertain. It's worked well for me, very well for me in the past. Yeah.
You know, I'll also say with that, there are a lot of New York investors in Philly. I mean, you know, we're like 90 minutes down the turnpike. So in fact, a property that I own over in Allegheny West, the owner lives in New York. So when there's an issue, you know, I call him. Like, we had a drainage issue in our backyard, and I've got his contact info. So he and I are able to just kind of like go back and forth, and he gets it done. So while New York is New York, and we're 90 minutes away, or maybe a little bit longer, don't, you know, I would say don't be reluctant to invest here yourself, because there are plenty of New York investors that are figuring out, and they do so either through property management, hiring a project manager during the GC, during the rehab process, or hire a good GC during the rehab process. So you could very much do it very easily in New York, right here in Philly, because you can get here soon enough if need be.
Indeed. Thank you.
You good, Arthur? All right, I guess it's good. So look, Marquita, you're very interesting. You're corporate finance, you own beauty salons, and you build mixed-use properties.
Yeah.
Like it's very
I don't build them, no, but yeah.
very interesting combination there.
Yeah.
So how did you, I always wanted to ask you this, how did you get into building mixed-use properties? And talk about your properties that you've built and developed.
Okay. So I got into mixed-use properties, well, my partner and I. So I got into real estate initially from somebody that I was dating. So he was an investor, and I am just a complete finance nerd, been that forever, and it's specifically been tax. And it's been always like multinational tax, and, you know, I do a lot in M&A. So I'm very good at like orgs and, you know, organizations and structure. So that's like my niche. He was great at real estate. So ultimately, you know, seeing that and just seeing, you know, the way that he was able to operate, I wanted in because I saw the benefits. So being a finance person, I was very good with numbers, and, you know, analyzing a real estate deal is extremely important. So that kind of was my introduction into real estate. The first mixed use property was actually the building that my hair salon is in. It's at 19th and Cecil B. Moore, and it was a bar. It was a bar, and it was a bar with, it's 3 levels. And so what I did was, normally what we would do was we would get something like that, and we would, like, you know, wholesale it or assign it. But I always, you know, in my other side of my brain, I love like beauty and all of that kind of stuff. It just, you know, I personally wasn't good at doing it, but I just like that industry. So I always wanted a beauty salon. So I said, why don't we just, you know, keep this, you know, do the whole thing, rehab it, rent the top units out, work the numbers so that no matter what we do with that commercial space, we're never under. And, you know, give me some time to figure out like what that could be. So that was kind of like the birth of like commercial real estate, realizing that, oh, okay, you know, we could maneuver it where we could take care of, you know, the cost or the expenses of the building on rental income and figure out slowly what we wanted to do with the commercial space or include it with the bulk of the rental income. So it was that building was the first one. And then there was another one with which my partner put his office, his real estate office. And then there was another one where there was a coffee shop, and another one now that has a gym. My tenant is a kickboxer. So that the beauty of that is, you know, it's safer when you think about it. That I haven't ever been like a business owner with a full, you know, edifice or a full structure until I was able to tie it in with rental income, because it alleviated that, you know, that angst of like, you know, what if I don't get enough clients and I won't be able to pay the rent, or that alleviated that. So now I was able to really fully focus on, you know, growing the business, growing the brand, getting the proper, you know, people to actually work in a salon. I spent literally almost a year interviewing stylists because I wanted specific types of stylists. I wanted them to be able to cohabitate and work well together because it's a small space. So I felt like I wouldn't have had that liberty if I didn't feel comfortable enough knowing that, you know, my net income or my ROI was not going to be under. So that I love mixed use buildings. That like I'm gunning for those, you know, post COVID. Actually, that's a part of my strategy. Even if I can't do anything with them yet, you know, I'll figure something out. But I'm like gunning for those types of buildings.
So are you buying those and just rehabbing them, or just completely destroying them and building new structures?
So the building at Cecil B. Moore was a rehab. So, you know, we kind of kept the structure like it was a bar, and it was more so all cement. And there was a really cool kind of like safe in the basement of it, which I wanted to keep and, you know, just kind of make, you know, more of an aesthetically pleasing. It wasn't able to be used, but that was a rehab. But everything else has been a complete buildup. Like the lots that were purchased were zoned already CMX2. So it was already mixed use, because it would be like, you know, in the lineup, like the ones on Cecil B. Moore were CMX2 because it was on a street where all the buildings were already zoned that way. So it's like mixed.
All right, so I'm gonna get Dawn on from EYLU. Dawn, did you leave yet? I think she left. I was just about to get you on. She said she hasn't run out, but can you ask them to give an example of acquisition rehab costs and what the rental income will look like for a 2 to 4 unit property? That was her question. So what's an example of how much a property will cost in rehab right now in today's market for multifamily?
I'll give an example of actually one that I just ran through with the guy I was mentioning earlier. He was on one of my consult calls. It's a 4-unit building. He is looking to pay. My suggestion was that he offer somewhere around like 190. He was going to say that he was going to buy it as an owner occupant. So, but you know, even if he didn't, so if he had to put 50,000 into the renovation, let's say 10,000 or so out of pocket, he was still looking to cash flow, I think net of his operating expenses, roughly $1,700 a month, between renting all of his units. We factored in 5% for vacancy. I think we factored in like almost $400 a month for his rehab fund, or just not rehab, his repair fund, his maintenance fund. And then with his principal and interest taxes and insurance, his numbers still look really, really strong. So I never recommend, Matt, for new investors to buy like full gut job rehabs like the ones that I do. I mean, normally when I'm doing renovations, it's a full gut. I mean, the place may or may not have a roof. It may or may not have a back wall. It may or may not have a front wall. Yeah, straight buck tooth. So I don't generally, because I GC that massive project myself. I don't typically recommend that for new investors, only because particularly in the Philly market. I mean, Philly is a very gritty, hustle kind of city. So, you know, it takes a lot to trust a contractor with that, a rehab of that magnitude. So I generally recommend either on a single family, 2-family, 4-family, start out with a contractor on a very light reno and see if it's someone that you can work with long term. But I mean, in my case, where I'm doing full gut job rehabs, I'm typically coming in around like 42,000 per unit. So if it's a 4-unit building, I'm coming in somewhere around 170,000 on a total reno. But again, that's me GCing the job myself, and that's literally everything. That is the building needing all new plumbing, electric, HVAC. I mean, it's a full gut job rehab. I'm coming in roughly around 42,000 or so per unit.
Now, what if you weren't GCing this job, right? Like, how much would that cost?
You know, a buddy of mine just did 2 side-by-side 3-unit buildings in Baltimore, and she got a number from her contractor. I think it was like 65,000 per unit. So of course it's going to depend on the market that you're in. A Philly, a Baltimore, you know, it's of course going to vary, but you know, I told her that 60 to 65,000 is still a lot, but at the same time, you know, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. You know, the issue is always, you know, if you've got a full shell and a contractor comes in and gives you a number like 30,000 or 35,000 or even 40,000 per unit, your red flag should go off. I mean, you just can't. It's virtually impossible to do a unit, or that, you know, it's virtually impossible to rehab a multifamily unit building that cheap, especially if you're doing them nicely. I mean, I do central air in every unit. I do laundry rooms in every unit. So I would be a little cautious if the numbers sound too good to be true.
Okay, interesting. And for the folks on YouTube, man, a couple people was asking what GC mean. That's basically she's saying she's her own general contractor. This is a lot of information, guys. I hope y'all taking notes on this one. Make sure y'all hit that like button while y'all here too. But I want to talk about this mixed use because the mixed use is interesting. Ish, have you done any mixed use properties, or you just all?
I'm 100% residential. I have no mixed use commercial properties.
Are you looking at your mixed uses during this potential COVID-19 crash?
Yeah, so last year I actually put in an offer for 2 side-by-side mixed-use commercial spaces. So basically there was a Poppy store on the first floor, which is like a bodega in New York. So there was a store downstairs, 2 apartments upstairs, and then on the other one there was a church downstairs and 2 apartments upstairs. So I put in an offer. It was a divorce deal, and like, I don't know if they ended up working it out or whatever. The seller ended up deciding not to sell. Michelle was the agent on that one. The ones in Ogons. So that one ended up not happening. So I'm interested, and if the market falls enough, I'll throw some numbers out for commercial mixed use.
So Michelle, how do we go about finding mixed use properties in Philly? Because we only hear folks talking about multifamilies in Philly, but Marquita made some great points. And then also just from a tax perspective, as she was talking, I'm thinking about the tax benefits with depreciating more because you have the business and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Like that should definitely, and now I'm thinking, like, I've only been to Philly probably like 10 times in my life, right? And I'm thinking about Philly now, it's like little Brooklyn to me. It looks like Brooklyn. It's mixed use properties, there's brownstones or row houses. It kind of has a Brooklyn feel to it. And there's a ton of mixed use out there. And I never thought about the mixed use property play out there. Like, how's the market out there? Because FHA, you can put down 3.5% and buy mixed use property also, as long as it don't exceed 4 units and there's more residential square footage than commercial. So like, how's the inventory out there for mixed use properties?
So the inventory is good. The issue that we run into is that you find owner occupants trying to buy it, and You could probably tell me a little bit better than, but what I've always heard is that in Philly, if it's zone CMX1 or CMX2, that FHA is a no-go. So in terms of saying, hey, you know, I'm going to buy one of those, like, you know, for example, if it has, you know, a corner store downstairs and 2 apartments upstairs, and you say you're going to occupy one of them, generally we can't get, unless something has changed. It's been a while since I've had a client trying to buy one of those, but we can never get those FHA approved if they're zoned at CMX 1 or 2.
Well, holla at me, because I get mixed use done with FHA all the time. As long as it's zoned for mixed use, then you're fine. And if that's the legal zoning and classification for it, you shouldn't have an issue. I don't know why the lenders had an issue with it.
But I mean, you know better than I do, but I've had a couple of clients who were looking to purchase those, and we bring it to the lender and they're like, no, it's zone commercial, so you can't do a residential mortgage on it.
Yeah, they probably just didn't know that you can do FHA with it, because most originators don't know.
You, I will.
Yeah, bring it to me. I'll look at it. Well, what's like the purchase price point for these properties out there?
I mean, I've seen those priced similarly to the multifamily. So I can tell you, for example, I showed one to a client last year, store downstairs. I think it was 3 units, if I'm not mistaken. It was 3 units, and it was priced at 200. Now it needed some work, but it was priced at 200. If I had to just guess, I would say, just to get the units up and running, I would say probably it probably need about 75,000 in work. But you know, it still was priced like a multifamily, so it's out there. It's just I really don't come across a lot of people who are interested in it. More people are looking for, you know, a multifamily, and they're not looking for investors. I have investors sometimes that are looking for them, but in terms of finding like an owner occupant, I don't come across people that often that are looking for that. But there's definitely inventory. Sorry, I told you you're gonna hear the boss lady.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm gonna take another question from whoever just had their hands up. Raise their hand again, because it went down. I don't know who you were. But while we wait for that, Marquito, like with air rights, right? Is Philly big with going up like New York, especially on the mixed use properties? Like, does Philly have any zoning issues with, like, if you buy a structure that's 2 or 3 stories, can you go to 6 stories?
I've never gone that high up. I have gone and gotten variances to be able to go up 4. And my most difficult, you know, hearing was just the fact that they couldn't, the community in which I wanted to go up that 4th level had the biggest issue with it, because that was supposed to be a roof deck. So I haven't really had many issues with going up as far as airspace in Philly. 6 levels, that's not really, I wouldn't know that arena, but going up 4 has been the most I've gone up, and I haven't had any issues. And I think I've gone to zoning maybe 4 times to have it zoned and gotten variances to be able to build up.
So when you're doing a commercial construction, is it the same process like Aisha was saying earlier, where you have to go to the community, you have to go to these board meetings, you have to go through all of that in order to get approval to rebuild a new construction project out there?
Yeah, well, if you want to get it kind of zoned differently, like for instance, you have to actually get your initial plan refused first. So it's kind of a backwards system, but you have to get it rejected, and then you're able to go and kind of contest it. And, you know, after you get your refusal, and so then you go get, you know, you go to the hearings and you got to get the community to petition. And normally the process, I haven't, knock on wood, haven't had much issue with it. The community, you know, can make a big impact though. And I had a lot of trouble with one particular project because of the community, because of the roof deck, because they thought that would mean, because it was in and around Temple. So they thought that would mean, okay, that's going to be the party spot for all the students up there drinking and throwing their cups and their beer off the roof. Like, you know, we don't want that. So that kind of made a big impact. And it actually initially got rejected. Wow. And then, you know, kind of, yeah, just community made a big, strong impact, but that was like their biggest thing. This is a residential block, you know, we are all older. We've been in our homes for, you know, over 30 years. We don't want this kind of like party scene here with this roof deck. So it was initially rejected specifically because of that. And then I think as more popped up in the area, it was easier for me to go back and get that, again, variance.
How long did that process take when you went back the second time?
So I sat on it and just left it alone. And then the second time, 3 months.
That's not bad.
Mm-mm.
You have all your plans, permits, variances approved all within 90 days. Is that typical in Philly when it comes to the process? Plans and permits and things of that nature approved?
It's taken me longer sometimes. I've had issues with, you know, I've had problems with the city. I've had problems with inspectors, you know, come in and, you know, I've had issues with the city. So I've had times when
you trying to keep it PC right now?
I mean, listen, they may be watching.
I know it's the first time on the channel, you know what I'm saying, Peter, but we keep it gangsta over here, man. You gotta talk your shit, girl.
I may have some of my I love Philadelphia very much, dear to my heart. But
we want to know the good, the bad, the ugly.
And the ugly has been, you know, I felt like certain projects I've been targeted for reasons I don't want to get into.
We know the reasons.
Mm-hmm. And so it's taken a little longer. A 90-day, you know, from start to finish, that is fairly quick. But when it's a cut, shut, and dry case, that happens. I've been, you know, sometimes in fights for over a year on properties. One was so bad to the point that I wanted to let it go because it was so hard for me to be able to, and I had the plans and everything was perfect. It was so hard for me to be able to justify an additional unit. Like, that was it. That was the big issue.
That's BS.
Yeah, but I love Philadelphia. If any inspectors are watching.
Shout out to all the inspectors in Philly. We love you. So, all right, I got a question from EYLU member Tiffany. Tiffany, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear, Tiffany.
Oh, perfect. I'm doing like renovations in the house. So I'm in Brooklyn right now, and I always like loved Philly. So I'm just asking you guys from a female perspective, like what's some good areas to like invest in? Because I could potentially work out there too. So like, what are some good areas that you guys would recommend?
I agree. Aisha said West Philly is a good area. I agree with her because especially if you're doing like a buy and hold for rentals, your vacancy rate I would always say would be at less than 10%.
Okay.
Yeah, you can never go wrong in West Philly. I mean, I've got my first property I ever bought was in West Philly. I've got multi-families in West Philly. I've got single families in West Philly. And just because of like, you know, geographically where it's situated, there are a lot of colleges there, hospitals. I mean, I never ever have a problem renting in West Philly. And again, I also like pockets of North Philly, Allegheny West. I've got more properties there than probably any area of the city. I think South Philly is already too expensive. So it would be very hard to get a good entry point there now. North Philly is probably one of the markets where you'll get some of the best returns. I'm very heavy in the Temple Medical area. I'm very heavy in Allegheny West. I like that. There's a sweet spot that I have between, if you can think of it as a grid, between Allegheny Avenue and Erie Avenue, north to south, and then between Broad Street to 17th Street, east to west. Anything in that little like grid, sweet spot. I mean, you can still buy relatively cheap. Your returns will be good, and you can still get people to live there. You've got a med school right there. You've got a hospital right there. You've got a lot of investors who are pouring money into that community. Not to mention all the stuff that's happening there that we've been waiting on, like massive development. They're talking about a hotel there. They're talking about redoing the Bury building. There's quite a bit that's happening there. So if you're willing to go like a little bit more hood, That's a good area, but still very safe. I feel very safe in that area. But if you want something that's a little milder, but your returns will be slightly lower, West Philly is always a good area.
That's a safe neighborhood for someone like myself to live in and invest in.
If it's for your, like, where you'll reside, you can't go wrong with West Philly.
Okay.
If you want to be like an owner occupant, and I always say, because I've got a reasonable person test, I always say when I'm looking at any rental property, I will only buy where I think a reasonable person would live. I say all the time, buy the hood, but I don't buy the hood. You know, in Philly, you've got some pockets where I just would not go, because I can't imagine why a reasonable person would live there. And I'm not trying to go toe to toe every single month on the first with somebody who they could possibly not even be reasonable. So if you're looking for a place where you could feel comfortable both living and renting, West Philly is a great area. So it gets a little bit pricey when you're east of 52nd Street in West Philly. But if you go from like 52nd up to like 63rd, between like Baltimore Avenue and Market, that's still, I mean, it's still a good area. You've got a couple of major colleges that are in West Philly. They're not very far from there. University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school. You've got Drexel University there. And then on the outskirts of West Philly, I mean, you cross right over into some of the most affluent suburbs in the nation: Gladwin, the Main Line, Villanova. You've got St. Joe's University, which is not very far from there. I mean, you've got PCOM, which is a med school, which is not very far from there in West Philadelphia. So there's a lot happening in West Philadelphia. So there's always a reason for people to live and rent there.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Tiffany?
No, that's pretty much it. I'm glad they answered it from a female perspective. Appreciate that.
No problem. Matt, somebody had asked a question earlier. I saw it flash up on there. Someone asked like why I decided to pass on being both an investor and a realtor. And for me,
what was the risk of being both? They said.
Yeah. So me personally, I only buy a property if I'm like damn near stealing it. So for me, the risk of someone saying that I was a licensed agent and I knew exactly what the comps were and I took advantage of someone was not worth it. And then having that person come back and sue me after the fact. So when I'm, if somebody's asking 100, I'm coming in way under. Like I just don't care. Like, 'cause in my mind, if I didn't steal a property, I don't feel comfortable buying it in the first place. So my offers are always like offensively low.
You said if you don't feel like you stole the property.
Yeah, if I ain't steal it, I don't feel comfortable. So my offers are always so low that, and if you took it, then like that ain't my problem. So that's like people, I'll have friends who will say to me, like, I've got a property that I want, and like, we don't even want to do this. We don't want to ruin our relationship. Friends and family, I'm not like, don't even tell me what you got for sale, because I'm going to come in so low that it will absolutely offend you. So as a licensed agent, the risk you run is somebody or the family members coming back after the fact, like, you knew damn well that property was worth 3 times what you paid for it. And now we're suing you because, so I don't want any grief. I literally went through all the classes, I spent my 40th birthday sitting in a real estate class. And then when it got right down to it, I talked to a very good friend of mine who's an agent, who's been an agent for a number of years. And she said, look, Aisha, I don't think it's worth it for you because I know how you play ball. And that's why, to me, I'd much rather still keep submitting my offensive offers.
So let me say, since we speak about that, right? Michelle, let me ask you, right? Because Aisha just wants to be real disrespectful to these sellers, right? You are a licensed agent, realtor, and an investor. So how do you walk that fine line of not being just disrespectful like Aisha?
Sure. Well, one, I'm not buying a house. Well, let me say this. I would entertain a house that's on the market. But 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't buy a house that's on the market. And if I did, I really wouldn't want to represent myself. But I think what Aisha is talking about is like, let's just, say that I run into you and you tell me, hey, I have my grandmom's house and I want to sell it. that absolutely poses a problem when you ask me, you know, well, how much is it worth? How much can I get for it? And I tell you, you know, 30 grand, even though I know it's worth 90. In those situations, by no means am I getting ready to put myself in that situation. So I would prefer to actually go through a wholesaler to probably obtain a property. There's no way in the world I'm getting into what she said, you know, in terms of like I run into someone. Now, I'll make you an offer, but if you're asking me in terms of how much is your house worth, there's no way I'm entertaining that conversation and then getting ready to, you know, tell you, hey, you know, I'll give you 30 grand for it when I know that it's worth way more. So it's definitely, it's a fine line for sure. It's a lot of risk involved when we're trying to, you know, put in an offer. I really wouldn't want a house that's on the market, but I also would, like Aisha said, I'm not going to buy probably from friends and family either, for the same reason that no matter what I offer you, even if I tell you what a house is really worth, as soon as I lowball you later on, you're going to be mad that you feel like, oh, hey, you know, I could have gotten more money for it.
So note to self, to all the real estate agents and future real estate agents, use a wholesaler when you're trying to buy undervalued properties. That way you don't put your license in jeopardy, basically.
Right. Absolutely. I know a lot of realtors who do it, and yeah, I wouldn't. I'll just say that I wouldn't.
Makes sense. I love that. All right, so let me bring on Odelia. I hope I didn't butcher your name, Odelia.
No, you said it perfect this time.
Okay, perfect. Because I know between me and Rashad, I know we've been kind of butchering.
Yes, sorry for putting my questions in the chat. I was trying to put the baby to sleep, but now I can talk. How is everyone doing? I've been enjoying this conversation. It's been very informative. I live in New York right now, and I work in New York, but I'm interested in purchasing in Philly. So I wanted to know, like, where in Philly is a good place to buy that would be a decent commute into New York City? At least like 2-3 days out of the week.
So would you be driving, or would you be catching the train?
Either, it could be either one of them.
I mean, you'd want to be right somewhere off of 95, I'm guessing. So, I mean, I would probably say South Philly, Fishtown, Northern Liberties, but those are all, yeah, those are all pretty pricey areas already. Okay. I mean, not, you know, pricey for Philly, not pricey for New York. So I'm sure the prices here would certainly look a lot more attractive. But if you're trying to be like off of one of the major expressways that'll get you to New York, that would be those areas. So South Philly, which is kind of like right off of 95, Fishtown, Northern Liberties, Northeast Philly. Yep. Those are all kind of like on that 95 corridor.
Okay. Thank you. And then my second question is the 10K grant that was mentioned like really early on in the conversation. Do you have to be a Philadelphia resident to qualify for that?
Yeah. Yes, you do. So if you're like, I don't know if you are you thinking about buying this kind of like as a second home, or you're thinking like primary residence, Philadelphia?
Primary residence, Philadelphia.
Okay. I think you still, I mean, obviously your primary residence, but you're saying 2-3 times a week that you're going to
New York, yeah.
And meaning that 2-3 times a week you're going to work, or 2-3 times a week that you'll be living in New York, or like what's the
going to work? Yeah, so commuting from Philly to NYC.
How long is the commute by train? Like 2 hours one way?
Yeah, probably about that.
Okay. Go ahead, Adelia. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump.
No, she was asking me about what did I mean by 2 to 3 times a week. I thought she was going to say something else after that.
Yep. So I'll double check that, and I can let Matt know whether, to your question is whether you already need to live in Philadelphia in order to get it.
Yes.
I can't remember. This grant has been out for close to a year, so I can't remember all the guidelines, but I will look it up and I'll let Matt know for sure. the property itself does have to be in Philly. That part I do remember, but I just can't remember whether you already needed to live in Philadelphia in order to get it. But I do know that the property has to be in Philadelphia. One of the other stipulations that you may want to consider as well is that you have to keep the property for 15 years, or you have to pay it back. So I don't know if this is going to be a short-term investment for you or a long-term investment, but you want to think about it, because even if you rent out the property or if you refi it, it has to be paid back. So there's definitely some stipulations for it. So if this is something short-term, then I would say you want to probably think about whether this is something that you want to do or not.
So Tim Williams on the YouTube, and shout out to everybody on YouTube. Tim Williams said yes, 3 years as a Philly resident for that program.
Okay. Okay,
You
thank
just
you.
have to live there, and then you can apply for it. But look what the keyword that she just said on that one, and that's why I always try to tell people, if you're going to take this free money, you got to read the fine print. Because they want you to live in there, you said, what, 15 years?
Yeah, there's no such thing as free money. We tell people that all the time with grants. There's a lot of grants available, but there's no such thing as free. They all have some type of stipulation. Sometimes it's living in a house for 3 years, sometimes it's 5 years, but there's always some stipulation. It's not just here's some money, do what you want with it, buy the house and move out 2 months later. It's never that. And sometimes some of them even need to be paid back. So, it's not always free money. It definitely helps, but it's not just free money.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Any more questions for the panel?
No, that's all. Thank you so much.
Cool. I mean, look, you ladies are dropping a lot of gems right now, man. A lot of information. Everybody on YouTube, make sure you guys like this video, because YouTube don't push anything unless people are liking the video. So make sure y'all like it, because this is just a lot. Now, Aisha, a couple people in the YouTube comments want to know, when are you going to start this investment fund? Because they want to invest with you. They like
I should have kept my damn mouth shut.
They're gonna be in your DMs now.
I said under the they would have to. It would like a whole lot of listen, you ain't gonna hand me on here like Jay Morrison folks ripping into me for their dividends. I ain't going out like that. No. It would have to be like market took a nosedive, and there was just some stuff that just looked way too attractive not to take advantage of. So, and I'm always. The reason I invest in real estate, because I'm a very heavy stock investor. I wouldn't say I'm quite 50-50, but I invest in stocks as much as I've been investing in real estate. Stocks are my first love. So I say to people all the time, with a lot of these real estate investments, partnership programs, trusts, like these crowd-funded investments, there's different hands in the pot that, like, when it gets right down to it, you may end up getting like a 7% return or an 8% return for that little. I would just throw my money in an index fund. Like I wouldn't even bother with the risk of me just throwing my money in a Ponzi. I would invest in a tried and true. So I say all that to say that if the numbers look
a Ponzi.
Listen, it's a lot of Ponzi's out here, man. It's a lot of Ponzi's out here. You gotta do the due diligence and make sure that you're putting we work hard for our money. So, we got to make sure that we're investing our money where it makes sense in something that's going to pay us a return. So if things look good enough for me to make a good amount of money and for me to give a good enough return to investors, then I would do a capital raise. But if it didn't make sense for me and everyone else, I wouldn't do it.
So you're basically saying, just so people are clear in the comments, that way nobody think you're bashing one particular person or not, because that's not what you're saying. You're basically saying, if someone's looking to invest in real estate, and instead of going with these crowdfunders where you got to put 500, 1,000, 1,500 minimum, you're better off playing the stocks and making a better return on that money, and you can get paid out whenever you want, versus that money being held up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I don't. My platform. I love to see our culture and our community trying to educate and trying to do better. I'm not, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to spotlight or highlight anyone who or call anyone in particular the you know, a Ponzi scammer. No, so I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying that we just really need to make sure that we do our due diligence, and quite frankly, for all of the expenses and fees and everything that goes into, like, not just crowdfunding, but like REITs in general. I mean, you look at a lot of the publicly traded and even privately held REITs, which is a real estate investment trust, when it whittles all down to the return that the investor gets, in a lot of cases, you would do better just parking your money in an index fund.
Now, I'm not going to get too much into the stock conversation with you, because I know, because of compliant reasons, you can't really, you know, go deep on that stuff. But interesting. I kind of agree with you on that one too. You're better off just, if you're going to risk your money, you might as well risk it yourself. Especially if it's that little money, you might as well just play with it yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I tweeted something not very long ago that said, like, if anybody's going to lose my hard-earned money, it's going to be me. So if I'm going to throw my money out there, it's either going to be a lesson learned because I figured out what worked and what didn't work. But you know, I'm gonna learn that lesson, that hard lesson on my own. I'm not gonna leave it to somebody else.
Interesting. And you want to add anything to that, Marquita? Or you good?
I'm good. I agree. I haven't really, I've never been in an instance where I've raised capital and kind of invested in real estate that way. Like I said, I've had a partner, but it was like a real partnership. It would be something I would entertain, but I just think it would be so much with that, that I don't know. I would almost just want to kind of keep it focused on, you know, if it's not a pure partnership, I don't know. I'm just not too comfortable, or maybe just not even knowledge in, you know, the kind of fundraising, kind of capital fund kind of situation. So that's just not something I'm like the most comfortable with. And the need isn't really there for it with me personally. So it's kind of
Okay. So Michelle, we got a question about NACA loans, right? Are folks in Philadelphia taking advantage of the NACA program? And most importantly, are sellers accepting offers with buyers who are looking to use the NACA program?
So my experience has been that a lot of my sellers don't want to accept the offers with the NACA program.
Mhm.
I think it's a great program, and my understanding is that it works much better in some other states than it does here. But I think it's a great program. I just think that we have a very difficult time getting those to closing. And I also think that the timeline that from the time that you start the program until the time that you close on a house is not explained fully to the buyer, so they really know what they're getting themselves into. But we definitely find that the sellers are reluctant to take the offers once we give them information, but obviously we allow them to do their due diligence, and they usually don't want to take the offer. If it's between that and another offer, they'll go with the other one usually.
So NACA's NACA on paper is a great program, but it definitely has its disadvantages once you get into the open market.
Right, absolutely. I think the intentions are great. I just think what they the expectations for a seller during that time, that, you know, what they're looking for from a seller, I just think sometimes is a little bit unrealistic. And I don't think that they are I always say that a real estate deal, and I'm speaking as a realtor, saying this, is that I think a good deal is when a buyer and seller is both, you know, are both happy. That, you know, if you put in an offer that both sides, it needs to be a favorable exchange and favorable deal. And I don't think it's favorable to the seller at all. But I think it's a good program for buyers.
Yeah, so from my experience with NACA deals, they take like 60 to 90 days to close. And the Philly market is just, from every deal that I've contracted, that I've closed in Philly, you know, those contracts come in 3-week closing, 4-week closing, I mean, shit, I even see on 203Ks, they still want 3-week closings. I'm like, you guys do know this is a 203K, right? Like, and they still want 3-week closings. They don't care. And then the seller is real tight on trying to even give you a 10-day extension. They didn't even want to do that. So I think the key to this, guys, if you're looking to use NACA, not discouraging you to use it, go ahead. But I think you should have a plan B pre-approval for a traditional program, just in case you find a home that you really like. You may have to use different financing. All right, so I'm gonna bring on a question from Alicia from EYLU. Alicia, go ahead. Did I butcher your name? Good. I'm unmuting you. You gotta unmute yourself. Okay. All right. I guess her unmute button's not working. So home buy, so basically, long story short, I'm trying to wait for Alicia's thing to unmute. But long story short, the Philly market is still moving. Ain't shit changed since COVID-19. Long story short.
Yes, that's correct. So pretty much not much has changed. I mean, we can't show houses and that's the only thing that's changed. Some people are waiting to go on the market, but for the most part, real estate is still happening in Philly.
So from an investor standpoint, what's next for you ladies? What are you guys doing next? Are you going to continue to buy? Are you looking to do more new construction projects? Like, what is next for you three ladies? And tell people how to find you too, because people on YouTube kept on asking for you guys' Instagram. I got some late.
So for me, I actually took a pause on buying because again, you know, I like cheap properties. So I actually haven't bought in Philly since 2018. I bought my property in LA last year, but I haven't been buying actively here in 2 years. So and in 2019, I just thought that values had gotten so high that I was willing to just kind of go back to my inventory to rehab what I had already purchased. Now I'm starting to get interested in buying again. So if and to Michelle's point, we haven't really seen we haven't seen the pullback yet, and I don't know if we will or not. Time will tell. You know, every investor that I'm talking to, I mean, I collected 100% of my rent in May. In April. And here we are in May, and normally my rent doesn't trickle in until like the 5th or the 6th. And tenants know that because of COVID, I'm waiving late fees. I've already collected 50% of rent so far for May. So, and that's rare. I mean, usually my tenants don't, you know, until the 5th, you know, when rent is still considered on time, tenants will start trickling rent in by like the 4th or 5th. And for me to be already at 50%, I think that speaks to the resilience of the hood. So, you know, almost all of my properties, I've got 2 in the burbs outside of Philly, but almost all of my properties are in the hood. And I think that in the hood, we know how to deal with life when shit is going bad. So we still know how to like figure out a maneuver and how to deal with hard times. And you know, these are what I consider hard times. So they're figuring out how to pay rent. So I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get the deals that I'm hoping for. So long story short, you know, if we see those deals present themselves, I'll certainly take advantage. You know, there may be some investment.
Ish, you want mute.
But I mean, I'm still getting my rent roll. It's like I had no idea how things would be come April and May, and I'm still getting rents.
So I'm glad you brought that up with tenants, and I want to ask Marquita and Michelle, you guys how has your experience been collecting your rent from your tenants during COVID-19 and people losing their jobs and everything like that? Are your tenants paid on time, or are you like, you know, what's happening?
No, I don't have tenants. Marquita can probably answer that question. I don't have tenants yet. That's the goal for this year. So I'm more of I've allowed Aisha and everyone else to kind of talk me into getting rentals, but I was a flip girl. So they can speak probably better whether they're getting rent, but it's good to hear that they are getting rent.
Yeah, that's key. Marquita, what's
So
up?
I've gotten rent. I've had tenant, one tenant that's had an issue. And it was to the point where they didn't even, that their issue was them not even wanting to express it to me. I learned of the issue and I reached out to them just to kind of make sure everything was okay. That's big with me also, being from the hood and understanding, how it feels when, you're just in a tight space and you feel like there's no other option and this person had children. So I kind of came up with a plan with them, specifically for them, letting them defer for 2 months. I still let them know that it was due, but, just kind of taking the weight off for 2 months. So in July, I'm going to allocate the 2 months that they missed across the rest of the term of their lease. And I just created an addendum, they signed the addendum, and then I just said, revisit me in July. And if you're still kind of having a situation, then we'll work out something from there and I can do another addendum. But other than that, even with the commercial space, I've gotten the rent.
That's
not for May yet, but they still have a day. But for April, yeah.
So let's talk about, since we're talking about tenants, and William, I'm gonna get to your question in a second. But since we're talking about tenants, how fast can you evict someone? Not during COVID, obviously, because the courts and everything are closed right now. But typically speaking, when you want to go through that eviction process, like how long does that take?
I've never had an eviction. A lot of my tenants are students, Temple, and then there are a few, millennials, fresh out of college, grad school. So I've never luckily had to deal with an eviction before.
Good, that's great.
Yeah, I've had probably less than a handful. I think that if you screen properly, you don't have to worry about evictions. And that's kind of like every landlord's nightmare. What if the tenant doesn't pay rent? But if you put yourself in a position where you've got a good property listed at a fair value, you'll get volume. You'll get a lot of interested applicants, and you can be very selective about who you put in your property. So I've been a landlord for 17 years, I think. And I've been to eviction court maybe 3 or 4 times. Those landlords that are so interested in getting first last security that they're willing to let their guard down just because they want that injection of, give me $3,000. I've had people come in like, I'm willing to give you money right now. And when I hear things like that, that kind of like raises a red flag for me. When I get people who are like, I need to move like today, like, why, sis? What are you running from? So, I think that, I feel like if you're a good landlord and you make sure that you carefully screen people, you don't have to worry about evictions. But in the 3 or 4 evictions that I did have, in Philly, as long as you have your ducks in a row, meaning you have applicable permits or licenses to have a rental, you provided them with all the rental suitability and all the documents that you were supposed to provide up front, it actually does not take very long. I usually opt to go the way of like kind of arbitration is what they call it. It's a binding decision. Less than 30 days, I can, or generally like in 30, maybe 45 days, I can have somebody out. It doesn't take very long. Someone asked, what screening process do I use? One, I meet every single tenant up front myself.
You self-manage too, right?
What'd you say, Matt?
You self-manage. You don't have a property manager.
I do all of my own property management. Ain't nobody got no 10%. My rent roll is $36,000 a month. Listen, I would be paying close to $4,000 a month for a property manager. Like I could go buy a $250,000 house for what it would cost for me to find somebody to do property management for me. I'm not paying nobody all that money. So I meet all the tenants myself. And being from the hood, I think that we've got that gut feeling when you're being hustled.
Yep.
So for me, like I feel like I want to meet my tenants up front. I want to screen them. I want to have a conversation with them because I can tell when I'm being hustled, and I can tell when I've got somebody who's going to be a good tenant. So that for me is important. And even if I decided to hire a property manager, I would want to meet the applicants that were going to move into my properties up front. I, of course, confirm income. Income needs to be 3 times the rent. I do, obviously, an identity check. So I want to see a valid state issued photo ID. The biggest thing for me in my screening process is checking for prior evictions. So, you know, I'm actually lenient on credit for a variety of reasons. One, I think that because most landlords don't report late rent to credit bureaus, I think that you can have someone that has a good credit score, but doesn't pay their rent, but they decide to pay their credit cards and car payments, which do report. And I think you can have someone with bad credit who doesn't pay their car payment and doesn't pay their credit cards, but they will make sure they pay where they rest their head at nights. So for me, if you've got prior evictions in the last 10 years, that's a deal breaker for me. I check 100% of the time. And I really don't care what the reason is on why one's showing up. So if you've got, oh, well, what happened was, it's out of my hands at this point.
What system, what website are you using to check for foreclosures?
It's for evictions, it's public record. So you can check directly on, I check on philly.gov, which is Philly specific court records. And then for all the surrounding counties outside of Philadelphia, it's on, Pennsylvania has a court record that I check, and I check 100% of the time. I check both for Philly and surrounding counties. And if there is an eviction, I can't do it.
Done. All right,
Done.
so I'm gonna bring on William from EYLU. He has a question. William.
Thanks. What is the best way for an out-of-state investor to find off-market property?
Wholesaler.
Okay. Thank you.
Agreed. I 100% agree. So I would say in that market, connect with wholesalers, either be it via social media or networking events. I would absolutely connect with wholesalers, or do the wholesaling yourself and connect directly to sellers, postcards, flyers, mailers, driving for dollars, everything that they do.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, good question. All right, I had another question, trying to find, where are you? We had another question in here. Okay, Nikki, I'm coming to you. Go ahead, Nikki.
Hello, I had a quick question. I'm out of state. I would be an out-of-state investor, and I saw a property in Allegheny West, and it said that there were unknown occupants, and basically that the buyer would have to deal with them. So I was thinking that there's squatters on the property. So my question is, how is Philadelphia with dealing with the squatters issue? Because I know some places you have to go through the whole eviction process.
You know, that's a great question. I mean, most investors in Philly find that it's fastest and easiest to just pay the person to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there is a very lengthy court process. If the person can prove that they've been living there for quite some time, the best thing to do is really just like pay them off and ask them to roll. You know, I've heard some investors, because it's such a lengthy process, I've heard investors do everything from like kick open the door and then call the cops and say they just broke in. And as you can see, there's, you know, signs of forced entry, which I have heard works. But at the same time, as a female investor, I'm not doing that personally myself. So I would probably just try to negotiate with the person to see if you can get them to leave.
Okay, like a cash for keys situation.
That's exactly what I would do.
Okay, that makes sense. I had a second question. I know you said you GC'd your own projects, and I'm looking to do the same myself. And I'm going through the process of getting my license now. Have you had any like negative experiences, since it's like such a male heavily dominated field?
Not really. You know, and that can, you know, you can take whatever disadvantage and make it your advantage. You know, I know I've got a bunch of my friends are female investors. I've heard stories from, you know, a subcontractor gives them a price and they'll start crying and they can get the price reduced. To my real estate partner, her best workaround is to just date our contractors. Listen, sis, use what you got to get what you want. Listen, get it how you live it. You know, so I mean, you know, that's it's you know, there's pros and cons to everything. I haven't noticed any, you know, I think that what most of your subcontractors just want to know and what you have to establish is that I am a professional, and you know what most contractors care, at least in Philly, about more than anything is, am I going to get paid? I mean, there are a lot of investors, there are a lot of homeowners that burn contractors on a daily. So if you can prove to your subcontractors that I will keep you working and I will make sure that you get paid and I'm not going to burn you, they will respect you. Because cash is king, money talks. And there's so many contractors that I know in Philly that have done jobs for people that have been burned. So if you become that source of steady income for them, they'll respect you.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions, Nikki. Thank you. I appreciate you. Tamiko, it's on you.
Hey, my name is Tamiko. I actually live in Philadelphia. I'm in North Carolina. I'm originally from Philly. I'm retired, but I just retired a couple of years ago. So I'm trying to buy some houses in like multi family houses in Philly, because my mom live in the southeast. Then I got family in west, north, like all over Philly. So I want to just come out there and just start buying houses and see, you know, what is your advice on that?
Love it. I mean, if you're looking for multi-family spaces, I would stick to North and West Philly where the properties are bigger.
Okay.
You know, I think that you know, I like the idea. I like the notion of buying in a cheap market. I tell people all the time that, you know, there's two ways that you can invest in real estate. You can either be an appreciation seeker or you can be a cash flow seeker. As a cash flow investor, there are certain markets that appeal to us. Philly, Baltimore, Detroit, Cleveland, Memphis, those are those markets. So, I mean, I like it. I mean, if you're looking multi, go Northwest where houses are bigger, and welcome back home.
Thank you. And then I have another question. What kind of programs do they have for veterans? Because I already own a house out here in North Carolina, and I was just wondering, did they have any other programs for me to try to reach into while I'm trying to buy houses out there?
Are you talking about for financing programs?
Yeah.
Nope, you're an investor. Being a veteran is irrelevant when you're being an investor.
Oh, okay. Too easy.
That's
I just wanted to know if they were any.
Good question. I wish there was 100% VA investor loans. I have
yes, right?
But no, unfortunately, your VA benefits only apply to primary residents.
Okay, that's too easy.
And thank you for your service.
Thanks. You're welcome.
So look, ladies, I got a question for y'all, because you all have experience with contractors. And the one thing, like for me, which is scary in Philly, is the contractors. And you kind of touched into it a little bit, Aisha. Every time I speak to a contractor out there, I just feel like the New York tax is just ridiculous. Like, how the hell, especially us from New York, right? How the hell do we find good contractors? Because I'm sick of these contractors trying to tax me every time they hear my voice. They hear the accent, and first thing they want to do is like put a 35, 40% tax on me.
Yep. Need a representative.
I tried with Malik, but Malik be all over the place too.
Listen, it does not matter if you were from here. You are going to. It's trial and error. You are. Yep. Listen, it's trial and error. It does not make a difference. That accent is not. It doesn't matter.
So wait a minute. So y'all get the local tax too?
Yeah, we do. We do.
You're a good guy. You know, a lot of that ends, but you treat your good contractor like family. Before that though, is trial and error. Like I have stories for days of how I've gotten burned, or you know, one of my contractors upped and went back home to the Dominican Republic. So trial and error. Now I have a guy who he's like a brother. He's really good, and I trust him. We trust each other. We had a great relationship, but it literally is trial and error. Like I had no like protocol or manual to follow.
You know,
So
the other thing I would say too, Matt, is it's important to make sure that you get multiple bids. You know, we get we get a little lazy, and like somebody comes out, the first person comes out, we don't feel like interviewing people, we don't feel like having multiple people come out. But that's one of the important parts of screening contractors. So if I get a bid for a job, I can't go with the first number that I get. I've got to get at least 2 or 3 estimates, and let them know, like, hey, you know, when somebody comes out, hey, just so you know, I'm getting 3 bids for this job. So make sure that, make sure you come out with your best number. So, I mean, and a lot of it is trial and error. And I think that even oftentimes you can have a good relationship with a contractor, and they've done, I had a contractor that did multiple jobs for me. I had been working with him for years, and I think that I don't know if it was drugs, it was probably a little bit of drugs. And I think that to a certain extent, he started getting jealous of my profits. You know, he started thinking like, you're making all this money off of the work that I'm doing, and like, I feel like I should be making that kind of money. So I think that there's a number of different things that come into play. And even when you have someone who you've been working with for a long period of time, I think that they also start pocket watching. So you also can't get complacent in your relationship with one contractor. So, I mean, you got to be really diligent. I think that also learning how things are supposed to go in a rehab will take you a long way. And a part of the reason I became a licensed general contractor is because it's hard out here trying to find someone who's not going to pocket watch, someone who is, not on crack, someone who is, not going to just gouge you for prices. That's exactly why I became a GC.
So how can a regular person getting new into the business become a GC?
The biggest part of being a GC is having relationships with subcontractors. So I didn't become a licensed GC until I'd been rehabbing properties for at least a decade. So early on, I think it's virtually impossible unless you've got good relationships with a plumber, electrician, carpenter. I mean, it's virtually impossible to do upfront. A question that flashed across here, which was a really good one, that said, like, how do you break up the payments to the contractor? And that's ultimately where it becomes like where you make or break your deal. Because where a lot of investors fail is they end up overpaying the contractor too early in a project. I've seen investors where 80% of the job has been paid, but 70% of the work still has to get done. And how you've got to think about it is 9 out of 10 contractors in Philly are robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? So the money that you're giving them, they're using that money to finish up the last person's job, Miss Susan's job. And then your money's going into finishing her project. And then suddenly your job is now not getting done because now he has no new bids coming in or he has no new jobs coming in. So he can't finish your job unless a new job comes. So it is literally like
a Ponzi.
To my earlier point, it is everybody's running a Ponzi. It's a contractor Ponzi.
A contractor Ponzi.
Listen, it's that's exactly what's happening. So that's why you got to make sure that it's very clear in writing up front. You do this and then you get this check. You do that and then you get this check. What happens oftentimes is that is not done in writing up front. So you're writing checks, cutting checks, paying your contractor, and the next thing you know, you got a $400 balance left. They've been paid 90 racks, and you wondering why you can't get a hold of them because they're off, doing somebody else's job and trying to look for another job to finish your job.
So let's put a little visual behind this, right? So if you got a 100K job, how are you breaking up that 100K? 25, 25, 25, 25? Like, how are you breaking this up?
So upfront, the only thing I'm paying for is material. So I've got a very different relationship with my contractors. I'm not paying any, Matt, I don't know how you work, but you don't expect commissions before you close your loans, right?
Hell no.
Listen, I don't expect to get paid before I work. What job is it out there that when I come in, I say, all right, well, you gonna pay me now? So I'm not gonna wait for my pay. You gonna pay me up front and then I'll get to it. What the hell kind of world does that exist? So for me, until at least a quarter of the job is done, I'm not writing you a check for any labor. I don't expect you to come out of pocket for any of my work. So I'm paying for supplies. I'm paying for my permits. If we need an architect, an engineer, I'm paying for all of that up front. I'm not paying labor money until at least 25% of my job is done. So it's an entirely different process. And again, if I have a contractor that can't do that, meaning they can't afford to get the work done unless they get a labor deposit, then we already have a problem just getting started.
Marquita, Michelle, y'all want to add to that?
I'll add to it because I can tell you that I have quite a few. I sell more rehabs than I sell anything. And I think from social media, from me posting so many rehabs, that a lot of first-time investors will contact me to sell their listing. And some contact me halfway through, some at the beginning, most of them contact me when it's almost done. But I can tell you that generally they tell me they're on their second or third contractor because they'll say, okay, you know, I paid the first guy 50% and he didn't finish. No kidding. Like, you paid him 50% up front? No kidding. And they're like, he disappeared. I bet he did. If you paid him 50%. So I run into that a lot with investors as well, with first timers, that they say, well, they tell them that no one does any work without getting some type of payment. And I'm like, that's bull. But yeah, I can tell you that that's the thought process, is that, hey, if I call someone out and I want to secure them, I have to give them 25, 50% of the money in order for them to start, or at least even hold my spot. And I'm like, no, that is like, you're setting yourself up for somebody to basically rob you. And that's generally what is happening. But I've seen it so many times. And sometimes with the same contractor is, you know, getting people left and right.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's in phases. Like, we get the material and pay them for labor. And, you know, knowing how the job should be run, you know, as far as what should be happening, the timing, how things should look, then that also helps too. So then it'll also help you be able to go and inspect and say, oh, okay, this is kind of like what, you know, some of my lenders do on my construction loans when they do draws for me. I go and I do draws for my contractor. So before we go to this second phase, I'm going to go inspect the pipes in the sink because I know how it should look. Now, I may not know how to do it, but I know how it should look. So they go in phases. I you know, I'm in finance, so I budget for them because a lot of contractors aren't, you know, they aren't the most savvy financially. So, you know, not to offend anybody, but, you know, oftentimes you have to budget for them, especially on your jobs. You know, but honestly, you know, you do it for them. So I always say, you know, I'm giving you an added service. You know, I charge a lot of money to do this for people. I'm doing this for you for free. I'm gonna help you budget this job out, and let me go check. I've got the materials. This is what it should be. Okay, we're on the second phase. Okay, this is what I'm giving you. This 20 grand should get you through until, I don't know, it's time to sheetrock. So I definitely do it in phases. Never, ever, ever, ever give them both money up front.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And you got a lot of fans in this YouTube comments too, man. So they loving you. Like, you got a lot of fans, Marquita. I'm gonna tell you that much. Lots of fans out there in these YouTube comments. Just FYI. So Layla, talk to us.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies. Good afternoon, Matt. So I had a really quick question, and Matt, you can chime in with this too, with anyone else that you may know. So, and as you guys were speaking about the construction, the whole construction portion of this, and Marquita was saying about how it should look, and it makes me think like, okay, so once I get this rehab started, I don't know how it should look. I don't know what this whole thing should look like. So I may be a victim. So I'm wondering if you guys would ever allow someone to pay you for mentorship, to do like a come along. And I'm not saying that you guys should open up a program or anything like that, but if somebody reached out like me and said, I will, if you have something coming up, I would love to go along with you. So at least I'm knowledgeable about what I'm getting myself into.
Good question. Anybody could chime in on that one. Y'all taking ride-alongs? Everybody quiet. Don't answer at once, guys.
I have a really good friend who does take ride-alongs. She's amazing. Her name's Tia Blair, Real Estate Reset.
Shout out to Tia Blair.
She does it, and she does a very good job at it. You know, she has this whole program. You know, I personally don't, because I have so much going on outside of just real estate and investing that I don't feel like I would be able to give the proper mentorship. Now, granted, it is a ride along, so it wouldn't have to be as hands-on, but just a plug for Tia. Her program is amazing. I would follow her and reach out to her because she definitely does them from start to finish. And a lot of the I guess the students that come out of her program are well into investing, like within months after. So that would be something good. And also there's a website called Housewise. I've actually used it, housewise.com and homewise.com. And you go on there and it like, you can put in the zip code and it doesn't teach you how a pipe should look or how, you know, a sconce should look, or it doesn't show you where a joist should be, but it teaches you, you know, how to kind of negotiate with your contractor, so you can see like, oh, okay, he's charging me this for flooring or this for sheetrock. Let me put in the zip code for all of the contractors that do this in this area and see if he's well within that range. So there's ways you could kind of help to make yourself not as vulnerable, but yeah, it's trial and error. I wish I did have the capacity to do some sort of ride along and mentorships maybe later, but that's just one avenue I know of Tia because she's a friend, but I'm sure there's others that you may.
Ish, you giving ride-alongs, Ish?
So so somebody booked, because I do consults, and Matt, who's a wholesaler of mine who I've been pushing to buy something that he would hold for a long time. He booked the consult and asked me if I would just come to his property and we could like walk through his property as the consult. And I did it. I'd like, you know, so I would be open to it. Like book me for an hour consult, and you know, between transportation getting there, and yeah, I'd be open to it.
So you'll do more one-on-ones versus like group setting.
I was talking about a one-on-one, me, myself, and I.
No. All of my consults are one-on-one. I mean, for female, I would definitely do it. Like, it's funny because Matt, the wholesaler, he and I were laughing when I got there because when I first met him, he was my wholesaler. I like literally our first meeting, and I said to him like, look, because Philly's a gritty city. I said, just so you know, like I got my 380 like right here on me. So you can come in with me or you can not. You know, we can do this however you want it. And he was like, no, I'll stay out here. You know, but thanks for sharing. So for, you know, like, I mean, I'd be open to it, you know, especially with a female investor.
Thank you.
So Layla, Atiya is teaching a class, I believe, on the 13th for EYL University. We'll put the links and everything out about that class probably by the end of this week.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, cool. Look, this has been a lot of gems, man. Shout out to, we've been running 200 strong on YouTube for this whole almost 2 hours that we've been on here. YouTube is a little bit different from IG. Like if this was IG, we'd probably have 10,000 people on it. But the IG crowd, for whatever reason, just they don't like to leave IG for nothing. So usually my lives usually have around 150, 200 around there, but you guys been consistently over 200. So that's like a record for me. So I definitely appreciate you guys and being on here. Now, I'm pretty sure this video will get thousands of views after the fact, but live, this was just some great info. Now, we've been on this, it's about 6:16 p.m. We started around 4:20. So we're coming up on like 2 hours. And like I said in the beginning, I was figuring an hour, 90 minutes. But I told you, sometimes these conversations be so good, they just keep going, man. I don't know how much time you ladies has. If you want to take one more question or if you want to end it, you want to have some final words, it's on you guys.
Yeah, we can take one more question.
Can you just mention, Marquita, the website you were saying again? Because a couple people on this Zoom chat and on YouTube. We're asking those web.
Oh, HomeWise, HomeWyse.com.
And that teaches you about construction?
Well, it's more of helping you estimate your cost of a rehab or your project. So it doesn't like teach you, you know, about construction per se, but it'll help you so that when you're dealing with a GC, it'll help you determine if they're giving you an average price or they're way at the high end or way at the low end, and it does it for your area. So it's helpful in planning out your rehabs and also when you're negotiating it.
All right, guys, you got that. HomeWise. HomeWise,
Yeah.
W-Y.
That's what I use, yeah.
W-Y-S-E. All right, so you guys got that. So shout out to Mike Parker, NCCU in the house. Chili Hall, shout out to you, brother. All right, so look, we're coming up on 2 hours. Time is money. I ain't gonna hold you ladies up anymore. Any closing statements that you guys want to say about your market and what's next and what's happening? Because you guys gave a lot of information on this thing. They could just rewind and take notes again. But any final words? We'll start with you, Michelle.
No, I mean, I don't have any final words. I know you asked us to kind of drop our social media handles. Michelle Phillips Real Estate on Instagram and Facebook.
Say it again.
Michelle Phillips Real Estate on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have wholesalers watching, I need property.
I love it. Go ahead, Marquita.
Ditto to what Michelle said. I got a 1031 I need to make happen. So wholesale. But also I'm under Araba _Araba. Now that's my middle name. So that's my Instagram handle.
Cool. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter. My whole name, Aisha Selden, all combined together.
No O's.
No O, yeah. It's E-N, not O-N. And no H's.
No H's.
Listen, people just add whatever they want. Yeah, so at Aisha Selden, S-E-L-D-E-N, and Aisha is spelled like Aisha Curry spelled it. So I mean, this was great, man. I think that this is exactly what our community needs. I love seeing platforms and forums like this to make sure that we get the education that we need. Because when we were in our teens, 20s, like early 30s, there was no this. There was no YouTube. There was no Facebook. There was no Instagram. So I mean, the very fact that these kind of tools exist now, I mean, it's incredible.
No, I agree with you 110%. I tell people all the time, when I first came in this business 18 years ago, the people that looked like me only wanted to make money off of me. They didn't want to advance. They didn't want to teach me the game. So those OGs that knew what was going on and they knew the market was going to crash and they had the knowledge, they kept it for themselves. Our culture is naturally stingy. You know, a lot of people say iron sharpen iron, but a lot of people don't really truly live by that. And that's one thing that we try to do is, we have a platform. The people gave us a platform, so why not really use it to highlight good information, real information, not no bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Not like we're trying to get people. Like me, Michelle, Marquita, we're all transactional in the real estate business, along with investing as well. But we feed ourselves, especially me and Michelle, by doing real estate transactions. But I hardly ever sell Matt Garland, the mortgage guy. Let me do some loans for you. Like this weekend, I put out a post. I'll give you a second opinion. Just let me look at it, right? I probably answered 150 emails this weekend just telling people, no, this is a good deal. No, this is a terrible deal.
Wow.
Because people just don't understand what they're getting themselves into. They think something is good, but it really isn't. So, I just try to do my best to lend myself as a resource for the community, and hopefully people are paying attention. If they're not, that's not my problem. You can lead the horse to the water. You can't make them drink. And I especially want to highlight females in this business because I don't think Black women get enough credit in this business. I can't tell you guys how many times women will DM me like, yo, can you put me on to the females on IG that are in real estate, because all we see are men. You know what I'm saying? And they don't see enough women. So that's why I really wanted to keep this panel all women, because I know Philly is just filled with so many different women out there killing it. But you three are like at the top of the top, in my opinion. So it was very important for me to get all three of you on here today.
Thank you. And I want to thank that, like, I want to see more of us using more of us. It's a lot of times that I show up at the closing table and I see a buyer or seller who looks like me, but their realtor doesn't. And I don't see that with other cultures. It's just with us. Like, for some reason, we will call someone else. And I think that with social media, there is so much information out here that I don't buy the story of you couldn't find someone.
Right.
You just had to look. So I want to see more of us, and whether it's a male or a female, I just want to see more of us using us.
I agree, 1000%, because there's plenty of us, especially for realtors and loan officers. There's plenty of us out there. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of who are very knowledgeable and that put our community first and want to give good information and give good deals. But for whatever reason, people just don't work with their own kind, and that's cool. Pick whatever floats your boat. But at the end of the day, I think there's enough of us where, you just got to look and you'll find us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Shout out to Kim J. She's also an EYLU member. She's in the YouTube chat with the super chat. I appreciate the love. She said, thanks, ladies. Lots of gems. All right. So YouTube, you guys know how to find these ladies. We said their information several times. All right. We got one more question from Layla, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Layla, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay. Michelle, Marquita, I'm wondering, because I've been looking for a realtor actually, is there any specific questions I need to ask realtors to ensure that they're investor friendly? So I don't.
You looking to buy in Philly, right?
No, I'm looking to buy in Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, Florida?
Yeah.
Well, you ladies, Michelle, you have, or Marquita, you have someone that you can refer in Jacksonville that has the investor mindset?
Or any specific questions that I should ask?
I would ask that question that you just said, ask them, do they work with investors? You will find some that tell you they don't. And then you'll find some that, that do. But I would definitely just ask that up front, do they work with investors?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And also how well they're versed in that particular market.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Good question. Marquita, you want to add to that or no?
No, but agreed. Just specifically come out and say it. You're investor friendly. Let her know what type. Let him or her know what type of investment you plan to go into, and just go from there. 9 times out of 10, if they aren't, that they'll be able to refer you to somebody who is. So that'll just get the ball rolling.
Yeah, Layla, and always ask them like how many investor deals have they closed in the last couple months? Do they own any real estate themselves? Have they flipped any real estate? You want to do a little deep dive on their personal experience with real estate as well, just to see what their personal resume is, and ask them questions that you already know the answer to, especially when it comes to like financing and stuff. Most realtors who are well-versed with investors, they understand the financing. So if you pay attention to the 2 things you really need to know when you're real estate investing is construction and finance. If you learn those 2, you can kind of weed out the nonsense and the BS people, and you can kind of get to the real people. So focus on learning those 2 aspects, and I think it'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to vetting out potential realtors. All right, so look, YouTube, we're signing off right now. I appreciate y'all. Make sure before y'all leave, hit that like button. And again, if you want to join EYL University, use my discount code EYLMG, gives you 60% off the annual discount code. I appreciate everyone for joining us live. I'm coming back this week with probably DMV. I think I may do Miami this week and New York. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. Turn on the notifications so that way you don't miss it. All my EYLU members, I'll definitely put it in the groups, and you guys will get emails when I get those dates and times locked down. So make sure everyone go follow the panel, go check out their pages. They're all super dynamic. They get into it. The Queens of Philly. That's what I'm gonna call them. Queens of Philly. All right. And the dogs.
He's so rude. He's so rude.
He was good the whole time.
Get that in there.
Listen, he said it.
Almost
He
made
said,
it.
wrap it up. He like,
No.
wrap it up. Wrap it up.
Almost made it.
All right. So EYLMG is the code. Use that code. If the code didn't go through, DM me on Instagram. I'll get you a new code. All right. YouTube, we are out. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. Peace. Peace, YouTube.
See you guys.
Bye.
Let me end this YouTube chat.